Sam Robinson, and this is the Gnostic Secrets podcast. Thank you for joining me tonight. Once again, I always want to reiterate that everyone is welcome on this channel, and no matter their background and belief system, for we are all seeking to unveil the occult nature of our reality, current and ancient. And please like, subscribe, and share this around. So, in this video, we are going to divert away from cosmology and our ancient prehistoric past of the Lemurian and Atlantean epochs and civilizations into current pressing issues of our own modern era in the 2020s and 21st century. And one of the things I always want to reiterate is the absolute deviant and surreptitious nature of the global elite agendas, because it seems to totally bypass people's filters of understanding and comprehension of how they are subtly shifting our use of language and terminology and phraseology in the modern vernacular and lexicon that we use not only on a daily basis, but within an institutional framework. People don't seem to understand when I bring it up. So when I hear someone do this, I essentially call them out and say how that phrase they used is subtly re-engineering the way we think about ourselves. And so what am I talking about? What I'm referring to, and it started before COVID, but it definitely occurred to a large degree during that period of the early 2020s. When you started to hear people utilize phrases like gaining new knowledge is like getting a software update, or even some of the pharmaceutical products being used on us and sold to us were referred to as an pharmaceutical update for the body to fight off whatever. And now most people think that this may not be a big deal. This use of language is perfectly fine in our technological age, where we're always using computers and now artificial intelligence, and are just sitting in a smorgasbord of the digital age, especially now in 2026. What I try to explain and delineate to people when I hear these things pop up in a conversation is how incrementally, and to me in plain sight, our use of language in reference and self-reference to human beings, and obviously ourselves, because that's how it's used in conversation, that we are being converted socioculturally and mentally into a machine-like framework to understand ourselves. So reality is referred to as a great machine. Humans are referred to as machines that quote work poorly. I forget which person said that, but that's a quote of the last 150 years. We are not machines. We are not digital. We are not technologies. We are sentient, ensouled, spiritual beings. We have seven principles: a physical, etheric, astral body, a spiritual soul, a divine spark, a mental body, and a vital principle. We are not machines. To refer to us as machines is, in the end, even if you want to go that route, is still only referring to the lowest of those principles. Not lowest in terms of less, but simply the most dense, the dense physical body itself. It doesn't work like a machine in any way, shape, or form. It works as a holistic functioning organism. Organisms are not machines. We don't work in pieces. We don't work in parts. This is why largely medical science is totally ineffective to solve a lot of our health problems, because they don't see health holistically. They don't see the body holistically. They don't see the human being holistically. They see it as a machine and working in pieces. So if there's something wrong with your arm, you only look at the arm. You don't look at the whole body. That analogy applies to a large part of medical science because it's all overly specialized to the point where a holistic concept couldn't even possibly come into existence because you'd have to be an expert in all fields. And that's not how the medical academic university training works. It's designed to specialize you. And that's not just in medicine, obviously. It's in everything. And that's why a macrocosmic conceptual framework is very rare when it comes to people with a lot of degrees. Actually, it's almost non-existent. It seems a lot of the time, and it's why a lot. You could say the smartest of us with the greatest intellect are so overly specialized. They never typically figure out these types of agendas because they're too specialized to figure it out. They only know their own piece of it. When you have to study all pieces to understand the entire picture, the big picture thinking in systems as opposed to thinking in pieces. If you only know your one niche of any field, you really don't understand the field at all. So when I heard my sister, not just my sister, but my second cousin, refer to get the where hold on, let me get the quote. It's a quote. Pardon me. 1 second. All right, here we go. This is what was sent to us by my second cousin. The first part of this I agree with. The second part, I absolutely disagree. I'm increasingly convinced that the willingness to change your mind is the ultimate sign of intelligence. The most impressive people I know change their minds often in response to new information. This is exactly how you gain real knowledge, not only by getting rid of negative knowledge, as Mark Passio would call it, but as new knowledge comes in, you reconfigure the remainder of your knowledge, if necessary, to adapt in the new information that has come into you, and thus you are continually reconstructing and regenerating your concepts of how the entirety of reality works, um, almost in perpetuity. Not the learning is never done because you're always getting a new information, and thus your beliefs should be changing. Your worldview should be changing as a result, unless you get maybe such a high degree of knowledge from so many fields, you can at least get a foundation of a worldview that actually um, you can somewhat maintain. But here's the part that I don't like about this: their minds often in response to new information. It's like a software update. The goal isn't to be right, it's to find the truth. All that I agree with, except for that one line. It's like a software update. Now, why do people refer to this as a software update? It is totally inapt to apply to a living human ensouled spiritual being. A software update. That's computational and digital concepts. Something like a software update. We don't receive software updates as an ensouled being. We receive new knowledge into our mental body and our mimetic framework of memory, and we either it reconfigures some of it or adds upon our already existing knowledge, or is erroneous information and we discard it as being useless and unable to be factored in to our pre-existing information. That is nothing akin to a software update. Yet you continually find people in the not just the modern era, the very recent era that we're in now with AI and this extreme digitalization, constantly referring to themselves in such digital terminology and phraseologies. And this is insidious. This is a subtle form of social engineering that people tend to just constantly overlook it. This has to do, I mean, all right, for another example, when it comes to some of this wearable digital technology like smartwatches, smart glasses, things like that. You have a lot of these like the Apple Watch and other things similar to it, maybe not quite as advanced, that do what? What do they do? They are able to give you statistical monitoring of things like your heart rate, of things like your maybe your blood cell count, and many and various other biological factors on almost a continual or daily basis. You can basically look at your levels at the end of a run, at the end of a day, the number of steps you take, all these things. All these things are simply information. It's just and technological informational statistics. And what occurs when I've just noticed this, when you continually wear one of these things, what are you doing? You are constantly thinking of yourself as a computer, as a digital machine, whether you know it or not, and are comparing and contrasting your various statistical levels based on the digital framework you have been presented with the wearable technology that you bought for yourself and that was promoted and sold to you. And most people don't even think about it. They just put them on. If they have the money, they buy them and they put them on, and they think that they're going to make themselves what? More efficient, um, more adaptable. They're going to be able to augment themselves and upgrade or update their daily behaviors and lifestyles through statistical analysis and digital readings of their biological levels, from whether it's from running or eating or um, sleeping. Now you can do it for sleeping. You can basically record all your different sleeping styles and how much you slept that day or didn't sleep, and it can give you a reading on that. And this is not beneficial. A lot of people that I know report how depressed it can make them if they fail to raise their levels or they don't maintain the levels of efficiency and efficacy, biologically speaking, that they had the previous day or the previous week. What does this do? This reduces their own self concept from a human being to a machine like organism that can be augmented through statistics. That is the germinal seed for a transhumanist framework of thinking and worldview system. It's insidious, it's subtle, it is absolutely not even obscured. It is in plain sight what's occurring when you do things like this, when you take on these technologies and wear them, when you, or even if you're not, even if it's not a technology, just simply referring to yourself as something capable of say, a software update, of, receiving patches and technological augmentation is very degenerate and de-evolutionary for the human mental framework of how they view themselves, not just themselves but their species. And I constantly run into this, and I constantly bring it up when it occurs, and no one seems to really understand what I'm talking about. They're like, "Oh well, it's just a term. I mean, you know what I mean." Yeah, I know what you mean, but do you know what you mean? And do you know where that meaning is taking you in your own framework and worldview? Do you have any idea where it's going to take you in the next 10 years, 20 years, 30 years, as this continues and becomes more pervasive, more widespread, as our digital age becomes ever more digitized, smart, and imbued with artificial intelligence? It's just not really artificial intelligence. It's really just software. But what will it be able to do? It will be able to do all those things. It will be able to record all your levels, And of course, there's also the idea that all this information will be sent to somebody besides you. The technology companies that create these devices are absolutely mining people for biological, their biometric information. Biometrics is now starting to reach its stage, its full blown stage of development and mass inundation in our Western civilizations. And people need to be aware and awaken in themselves how dangerous this is to the human species. It is extremely dangerous as a framework for understanding yourself as a species and our reality. Nature is organic. You are organic. You are a being. You are not a machine. Animals are not machines. Nature is not a machine that can be augmented and enhanced through technologies. Technologies can be useful. I'm not saying that they are not. But what needs to come along with these technologies are the proper mental frameworks for utilizing them without destroying your own concept of yourself as a human being and as humanity as a whole species. Because that's what's going to occur very easily, gradually, and subtly, but inevitably, if this type of thinking and use of language is not curbed before this completely takes over. Far too many people ignore this fact, and then they don't laugh at you about it, but they think that you're being like a little ridiculous to call out that language use when you're not. I know I'm not. I understand exactly where this is taking us as it increases in daily use between humans who are starting to see themselves as machines and no longer human beings themselves. And that's the goal of transhumanism and this agenda of these harmonic eighth sphere forces that I've talked about in some other videos. They want you to forget spirit entirely. They want you to completely deny any sort of spirituality or spiritual aspects within reality, the spiritual planes of existence. The harmonic forces want you entirely focused on the mineral and material plane of existence to the point where there is no such thing as the spiritual at all. It will cease to exist. It will be a void in your consciousness if they fully succeed. And you will only be thinking of yourselves as machines. You will have a machine like consciousness with a machine like augmented body and a machine like social structure. And you will turn the earth into a poorly functioning, dead like machine, a mechanized earth, as opposed to a spiritually evolving and organic earth and biosphere. You cannot quantify spirit, you cannot quantify human beings and everything that makes us what we are. If you When it comes to quantification, using the utilization of mathematical statistics and numbers to try to quantify everything about a living spiritual and soul being, you degenerate and debase the very idea of a spiritual being itself because you turn them into nothing but numbers. You turn them into nothing but ones and zeros. We do not live in a simulation, and you are not a simulation either. You are not simply um, a non-player character within the matrix. You are a spiritual being with a spiritual evolutionary path, forward or backwards. Forward for evolution, backward for de-evolution, and or devolution, as some call it. And the use of this type of language, the use of this terminology, this digital terminology to apply to organic, living, breathing beings, will only lead us towards a de evolutionary worldview of ourselves and of our entire biosphere. I mean, and it goes far beyond this. We're obviously inundated with all sorts of high frequency radiation all over the earth. And now, Musk and his Starlink are inundating us from the skies as we're inundated from the ground as well. And, they want everyone to have wearable technologies like smartwatches. They want, the same thing with, for eyewear. They're talking about implanting, you know, you know, nanotechnology within your actual clothing to have wearable technology in that sense. And it's only a matter of time before implantable technology goes fully mainstream. You might say it has with Elon Musk's Neuralink. It really hasn't, but we're getting close. We're on the edge of that stage of regressive development of the human body. The human vehicle will degenerate once it becomes fully implantable in mass. And what do you think they're doing when they're seeding these phrases and this use of digital language upon the human form, the organic human form? What do you think they're doing? They are planting the seeds for the conceptual framework of the merging of man and machine ahead of time. It's brilliant social engineering to do that. This is exactly why I hate to say it. When I look at the idea of transgenders and transgenderism, what's the root word? Trans. What's the next phase of that stage of concept development? Transhumanism. You can't go from regular human to transhuman. You have to have an in between stage where the mind can kind of take it by two, at least two. Obviously, this would just be two stages. The initial stage of just seeing yourself as an organic human, then transgender. What does transgender as a concept and worldview system really represent when you're looking at the human being as a being? You're saying that it's moldable, that the laws of biology do not exist, and that what does that really imply? That implies that the idea that you've long held of what a human being is doesn't exist either, and it's now become uh, moldable. It is now plastic. It has a plasticity to it as a concept. And once you've ingrained the idea of that plasticity of the concept of a human being itself, you can then push it towards transhumanism. But you have to do the groundwork first. And part of that groundwork, besides that whole agenda, is the seeding of these terms in everyday language use between humans, getting the human to see itself as non human and machine instead, and machine like. If you completely alter and invert the language around how we consider human beings and to refer to them as digital machines that just have data, you are far along the path ideologically and social culturally through your use of that language, that alteration of phraseology, to step into transhumanism far more smoothly once that day comes. Because the way you view yourself through words and language is every bit as important as what you actually do to the physical body, because the mind is more powerful than the body, and you use language to when you use the mind. Most people can't think outside words when it comes to thinking at all. Thinking is typically revolves around the use of language and words and phrases, and typically colloquial phrases. So if you can shift the colloquial usage of terminology about yourself and other humans into a digitalized framework, you've socially engineered language itself to become readapted to machine-like thinking, to machine-like concepts, and a machine-like being itself. You will think you're a machine. And once you think you're a machine, you might as well merge with one, because otherwise you'll see yourself as inferior to the machine. And that is the exact stated goal of the technocratic global elite agenda, is to merge you with the machine. But you're not just going to do that. You have to lay the framework and groundwork for doing that, and for getting humans to see themselves in a new light as a being before they'll ever merge with technology. You can't simply tell them the benefits. You have to recontextualize their entire concept of what it means to be human. If you read people like Yuval Noah Harari and some of the stuff, or a good bit of the stuff coming out of the World Economic Forum at Davos, they talk like this all the time, out loud, out in the open, at their little dirty globalist forum was meeting last week. If you look into the stuff that they say, and specifically Yuval Noah Harari, who talks about this a lot, when you look at how they refer to humans and to themselves and to everyone else, they refer to themselves like machines, and to you like technology and data mining centers. That's all you'll be. You'll be a data mining. You'll be just simply be a data mine, and you'll think of yourself as a data mine, as a digital technology itself, within a world of digitalization. And then the next step, the step into transhumanism, will be quite easy and smooth for this global technocratic elite if they can completely convert our use of language around our own concepts of ourselves into a digitalized transhumanist framework first. If they can succeed in doing that, they will be able to get you to actually do it on the material plane itself. So what they're really doing is they're attacking you on the mental plane. They're attacking your mind and your thoughts. They're creating thought forms that they then get you to generate as a thought form. The thought form being you're a machine. You are data. You can use your own data, which is really what? It's your lived experience. And self-development markers become data augmentation statistics as opposed to self-development. And if they can perform inception in the mind in a generalized fashion, pervasive fashion, they can alter your thought form of yourselves. Then we will generate the thought forms for them in mass, creating the ideas of ourselves as digital. And then those thought forms will reinforce and re-influence our own thinking as they hopefully in the agenda of the elite's eyes become self-persisting egregores of those ideas that will then re-influence the ones that generated them, meaning the masses, and